Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melissa Lieberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Welcome to this week's episode. I'm thrilled that you are here, as I am every week. And today I want to talk with you about leveraging retrospectives for your own consulting business so that you can unlock continuous improvement, so that you can make your business more efficient, more consistent, have more impact in what you're doing, be able to ultimately charge more for what you're doing and work less by using the value of retrospectives, the value that doing retrospectives really pulls out for you. A lot of times we do these retrospectives for our clients in the course of an engagement that we've got with those clients. We may do a retrospective during different phases or at the end, a lessons learned, those types of approaches. But oftentimes it's the cobbler's kids have no shoes scenario, and we don't do that for ourselves. And so today I want to walk you through the details around how to do retrospectives in a very effective way for your own business and how to overcome the obstacles and resistance that you might be feeling about doing this in the first place. So that's what we're going to be talking about and diving into today. It happens to be a theme that I've got going on. I decided this summer, I referenced this a few weeks ago on the podcast, that I wanted to spend this summer really tightening up my operations. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been helping other clients do that. And that's where I'm centering a lot of these episodes this summer around how to make small changes or add small operating procedures, easily executed operating procedures into your business so that you can tighten up your operations as well. So if that's something that feels really impactful to you and interesting to you to start tightening up these operations as well, I've been sending out emails every Friday that focus in on the small steps you can take to make a big impact in terms of tightening up your operations, solidifying the foundation of your business, having better standard operating procedures and knowing what your business routines are and making them effective. If those things are of interest to you, I'll put a link in the show notes and in the podcast description here in your podcast player for you to go and subscribe to my email list, and then you'll get those emails every Friday. All right. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Just wanting to share a personal update here for a moment. And this seems to be a trend. I don't know if you're also having this problem, but I've had 3 or 4 coaching clients this week and also myself tell me that they're having hardware issues, technical issues. And my sound went out on my computer. So that is what I'm battling at the moment. I can hear my clients, on Zoom, or people that I'm meeting with on Zoom through a headset, but otherwise the speaker has stopped. And so I just share this with you because if you're having the same problem, I think our first thing that we think of as independent consultants is I really miss that IT department when they would just ship off overnight a new laptop or whatever. And I really do miss that. Although I will tell you, I have a Dell, so I have a PC, and I decided to buy the extended warranty. And I am so happy that I did because essentially they are coming over here. I had to spend a couple of hours on the help desk. But once I got through all of that and proved to them that we have exhausted all the options and there is a hardware issue, they are coming over here and bringing me a new motherboard and replacing everything. So, highly recommend whatever options you have in terms of warranties or that kind of thing to make yourself a pseudo IT department by leveraging that type of service. So, anyway, if you're facing those kind of issues, I don't think you're alone. It seems to be in the air right now. So, I am recording this, and as soon as I do and have a couple more calls, I am headed to Albuquerque for a long weekend, a 3-day weekend. My 2 oldest sons qualified for this regional swim meet. And so I get to go spend 3 days down there, mostly inside at the pool, watching them swim. But I'm excited for them. It's a big accomplishment. So that is what is happening over here at the Melissa Lieberman coaching offices. All right. So now let's dive into today's agenda for this topic of retrospectives and leveraging retrospectives in your own business to drive continuous improvement. So, the agenda for today, we're going to start off and talk about what is a retrospective or retro. I think you know, but just so we're all on the same page. Then I'll talk about three times that you want to start doing a retrospective for your consulting business. So we're not talking about right now with your clients, we're talking about retrospectives for your own business. And I know likely if you're listening to this, you're a team of one. You might have some subcontractors who assist you from time to time, but you are in charge here and you're wearing a lot of hats. And so bringing all of those versions of you to the table is going to be really important. Even though there's only one of you and there's not a team that you might be used to, doing retrospective with a lot of people, it's still important to do it. So, anyway, I'm going to talk about three times that you'll want to do a retrospective in your consulting business. I'll give you an example. Then we'll talk about why these retrospects matter. I'm going to give you a But Melissa here today. If you haven't heard a But Melissa in a while, it's usually where you might be arguing with me about this or giving me the reasons in your mind about why this won't work for you. So, I want to touch on those to help you get past those. And then we'll wrap up with a recipe for an effective, impactful retro that you can leverage. So, essentially, an agenda that you'll use for the retro meeting with yourself. And that's it. So, that's what we're going to focus on today. Before we dive in, the complementary resource that will help you reinforce and implement today's topic. I strongly suggest that you go to the show notes. So, there will be a link in your podcast player to click there for the show notes. Go find the show notes, and the entire recipe for this impactful retro will be there for you. So you can copy and paste it into your own standard operating procedures and then tailor it from there and start implementing it right away. So, giving you the head start. So, go grab that from the show notes. And then also remember to subscribe. I'll put the link there too to subscribe to my email list so you get these emails every Friday about tightening up your operations. All right. That's what we're doing today. So, what are retrospectives or retros? The easiest way to find a definition these days is to just ask ChatGPT. So I did. And I edit it, which is always important. Once you get an answer from ChatGPT, definitely edit it or ask for more clarification. Anyway, that's a side note. The point is, what is a retrospective? So, as it's defined in ChatGPT, a retro is a meeting held by a team at the end of a project or regularly throughout a project to reflect on what happened during the project or particular phase. So, just to take a moment here, in this case, the team is you and all of the different hats you're wearing. If you happen to have other people in your organization, of course, you'll want to include them, whether they're subcontractors or employees or other vendors, even. But for the most part, you're the one doing most of this retro with thinking about it from the different hats that you wear in your company. Also, the word project, we'll talk about how that's a loosely defined thing. It's easy to think about it as an engagement with a client. And I'll share with you what the examples are for you in your business here in a moment. So think about that relatively loosely until I tell you exactly what it means. Okay. And then the rest of the description from ChatGPT that I summarized here is during the retrospective, the team, in this case, you're the team, right? Discusses what worked well, what didn't work well, and how they can improve for the next iteration or the next project or the next time they do this thing. The ultimate goal is to identify ways to improve your processes and efficiency so that you do have a culture of continuous improvement that you're creating for your company so that you aren't repeating the same mistakes or the same approaches and getting the same results over and over again, such as roughly the same amount of revenue over and over again, or roughly the same type of close rate, or landing the same type of work that no longer inspires you. So that's what we're talking about here today. Let me give you some examples. And the best way to give you some examples is to talk with you about the three kind of trigger points in your business that would be really important to start implementing this retrospective process. So the three triggers for when to do a retrospective for your business are number one, time based. So you might do retrospectives at the end of every week. You might do them at the end of every month. You might do them at the end of every quarter or at the end of every year. That's a time based type of a process that you want to be thinking about. I like to do a mini one every week, a bigger one on a monthly basis that then helps me roll into what are my plans for the following month, a bigger one than that at the quarterly level, and then, of course, a bigger one at the annual level. These don't have to be incredibly involved. It can be a 5-minute process on a weekly basis. But it's incredibly important to get into that rhythm and know what your time based retrospective process is for your business. The second trigger is more of a what I'll call a skill building or skill refreshing scenario that you might be in. So, for example, you might be wanting to get really good or better at your discovery meetings so that you have a better close rate, better alignment, better way to ultimately offer value based pricing in your proposals. So, if that's one of your goals is to get better at leading a sales cycle, a sales process, you might and getting really deep into the requirements, you're getting to the why the client wants it and what they're expecting and how they quantify it. You would then do a retrospective after every discovery meeting. If you're wanting to get better at networking, for example, and turning networking into opportunities, you would be doing a retrospective after every networking call or coffee or lunch that you have, or any networking event that you go to. So you're doing them, those retrospectives, when you're building a skill and you're wanting to really speed up your improvements, get past where you've been stuck before. Those are some examples of skill building triggers essentially for a retrospective. And then the other trigger for a retrospective, the third trigger for a retrospective is when you're finishing something. So it might be when you're at the end of an entire sales process. You might do a retrospective there to say what went well and what didn't go well and what will I shift about my process. Again, these are internal retrospectives. It's separate to be doing it with your client, and it's important to be doing it with your client in some cases, like a win loss type of an interview or retrospectives throughout an engagement. But here I'm talking about retrospectives for your own business. So when you've finished a sales process, for example, you might put it in that every single time. I teach this to my clients every single time. Part of your process, there's these 5 steps. The fifth step is doing a retrospective. So that is really important. Those are the 3 triggers and some really specific examples about when you would want to be implementing a retrospective in your business. So let me give you a really specific example here. I had a client a while back who was really resistant to these retrospectives. It's like, oh, just another thing on my list. This is such a hassle. I don't have time for this. It's kind of a nice to have. Those types of pushbacks that most of us are thinking in our heads, right? So I was working with her and encouraging her to give it a try. Let's just give it a try and see what you take away from it. And so here's the scenario that she was doing the retrospective against. That she had a deal, it was going really well. So she had this potential client in consulting buyer in her pipeline. The process was going really well. They were talking about logistics, so when they might start, what it would look like. Everything was looking phenomenal. But then all of a sudden, the deal fell through, shocked her, sort of a gut punch. They went dark, really, and silent. So basically, she was just so frustrated, angry, disappointed. And the last thing she wanted to do is have a retro. I mean, she would basically wanted to sit on her couch, ruminating, going through a bunch of scenarios like, did that client die? Did they get hit by a bus? Did they get fired? Why are they not calling me back? Everything was seemingly aligned. What is happening? And so she's just ruminating and feeling just an incredible amount of anxiety and disappointment, wondering if she said the wrong thing that blew it up that she didn't realize, or and also judging the consulting buyer for, are they operating in bad faith? What's wrong with them? Why wouldn't they just be courteous? All of these things, right? That is not helpful. I mean, it's part of the human experience. So I'm not saying that it's something you can avoid, but you're not going to capture anything out of that process by sitting there on the couch until you just sort of talk yourself up into just pulling yourself up from your bootstraps and moving forward. If you do that, which was what she wanted to do, just kind of feel crappy for a few days and move on, you're missing so much opportunity. You're missing so much potential learning that you could have for your business. And it doesn't need to involve that potential client at all to be able to pull out these learnings and the inputs that you need for the continual process improvement. So we agreed that she would just take a step back and go through this retro process, which she did over a couple of sessions. It was, it's painful. No one wants to look at this stuff. It's like getting on the scale. You just don't want to see the number sometimes, right? So she gave herself some space, gave herself some ability to do this retro over a couple of 10-minute sessions. And here's what she took away. She took away, and I'll give you the formula for doing this here in a moment. But what she took away from the retro process was that she realized that she had completely skipped over most of the discovery that she typically does because the consulting buyer was in a hurry and she was trying to be responsive. She was trying to be helpful. She was trying to pivot to what they needed. You can go back and listen to last week's episode about premature proposals if you would like. It's, similar to that. But she really realized as she took a step back and started looking at this more objectively that she didn't really know why they wanted to do this type of work. She identified so many assumptions that she was making because she was reacting to them being in a hurry. And because she was in this reactive energy versus in a confident and leaderly and kind of peer type energy versus reactive and subordinate type energy, it came across so differently to that buyer. She took some steps for granted, just thinking, they're ready to go. They want to schedule all the logistics. And she also sees where she also shared with me areas where she had overcomplicated things, that it could have been more simple and streamlined as well. So these are all learnings that she took away once she just, was able to be open to looking at this objectively, that nothing is wrong with her as a person, that she hasn't made any mistakes that other people haven't ever made before, and that quite frankly, she'll make these same mistakes again, that it's okay to make mistakes, that it's okay that, things don't go the way you want them to. And that really anytime when something does go well or when something doesn't go well, spending the time to do this retro means that you're making the most out of your investment, the investment you've made from a time perspective to go through and do whatever it is that you're doing, like this sales process example that I'm giving you. If you're choosing to spend time on things, you want to make sure you're getting a return on investment from them. And the way to get a return on investment from this energy and this time that she put into this process is to do a retrospective and be able to see where she, using her best guesses, because she's not talking to the other person, using her best guesses, got so much out of it to understand where she wanted to readjust her sales process, where she needed to remind herself of things she had already, learned and just needed to refresh. And her result here was that she identified specific changes she needed to make or wanted to make in her sales process. She identified that she had so much more control in the outcome than she was initially thinking, that felt so much in that other, consulting buyer's court who chose not to continue replying. She saw that she's not bad at this and that the consulting client isn't a good or bad person, that she's got so much more control because she's able to look at this retro and see on her side of the equation what she chooses to take away from this and use to shore up her processes. She realized that she needs to put in what I call a mental protocol before each step in her sales process. This is something that I teach my clients to do, which is really purposefully thinking about each step of the process and getting into more of a leaderly energy or a peer energy versus a reactive energy. And she also realized that she wanted to normalize that it's a normal part of doing business, that things aren't going to go the way you think they're going to go, even if it feels like I've got this one in the bag, and that she can handle the ups and downs. That's a very specific example of what the goal that one of these retros can give you in your business. if you just are willing to look at it, willing to take a step back and look at things that went well objectively, so you can do more of that, and things that didn't go well, so that you can shift and adjust the way you're approaching things to continuously improve. That's why we're here. So let me just boil this together so that to summarize why these retrospectives really, truly matter and should be a non negotiable in your business. As a business owner, if you had employees that you had hired and you were truly running the business as a CEO and not juggling delivery and running the business, you would likely instruct these employees to do retrospectives, to do lessons learned, to have a culture of continuous improvement. So you are now your own employee. That is the expectation that you would be setting for yourself. So, as I just touched on, why these retrospectives matter is that you're making investments in your business. Usually they're time based investments, networking time, writing of proposal time, conducting discovery call time, doing marketing activities like speaking or writing. You're investing, even if it's not money. Sometimes it's money. Most of the time it's time. That's an investment. So, not doing a retro is the equivalent of throwing so much of that money just out of the window. That if you think about time as money right now, you're just throwing it out the window. It's like, I don't know what didn't work, but I'll just keep going. I'm just going to keep plowing ahead. I've got a long list of stuff to do. This is what's slowing down your progress. This is what's creating plateau. Not doing a retrospective is you not investing and building up your skills. So it's so important to do these retrospectives so you're not operating on autopilot, so you're not producing the same results over and over again, and so that you can continuously improve and therefore have more impact with your clients, bring on more interesting, higher paying work, attract clients that are more ideal for you. The only way you're going to do that is if you're willing to look at it. You're willing to do these retrospectives and probably feel bad. It's not going to be fun to do these retrospectives. It feels horrible sometimes. It feels exposing. You can feel a lot of inadequacy or self doubt. If you're willing to feel that and keep going and be okay with it, but know that none of this means anything about you as a person, you can move so much further faster. So let's talk about this, but Melissa, you might be arguing with me right now. I don't have time. I've got so much on my plate. I can barely keep my head above water as it is. I'm balancing all these things. I don't have time for this. I'm telling you that if you choose that to believe that, you're leaving opportunity and money on the table, and you do have time. The reason why I know you have time is that I know that an effective retro can take anywhere between 5 and 30 minutes. I know you can fit that in. I know you can fit that in. You might have been scrolling on something to avoid doing what you don't want to do for the last 5 minutes. You have the time. The truth is, it's not about the time. You don't want to feel bad. You're a human. None of us want to feel bad. I don't want to do these retros sometimes either. Most of the time, I do not want to do them because I don't want to feel bad. I don't want to feel regret. I don't want to feel inadequate. I don't want to feel self doubt. You don't either. You're a human. None of us want to feel this. But at the end of the day, you get to decide, do you want to have the same results and experiences and roughly the same outcomes over and over again? Or do you want to grow? Do you want to expand? Do you want to cultivate and build new skills? Do you want to have a greater impact? If you do, then you have to be willing to feel those things and do the retro anyway. And you might need to break it up into 5-minute chunks, and that's okay. You can feel regret or inadequacy for 5 minutes and then go do something else. Do the next 5 minutes the next day. Like, make it work for you, but don't skip it. Don't skip it because you're telling yourself it's a nice to have. It is not a nice to have. This is one of the practices that fuels the growth in your business. Okay, let's talk about what's in an effective retro here as we're wrapping up today. What is in an effective retro? The first thing that I want to implore you to do, and this is not fun either, but I'm going to tell you that this is the key to an effective retro. And that is look at the scenario that you're doing a retrospective on and take 100% responsibility. If you go at this and think about it as, you know what, this is all on me. It has nothing to do with external circumstances. It has nothing to do with that consulting buyer. It has nothing to do with that consulting buyer's budget. It has nothing to do with the economy. If everything was my responsibility, how am I going to answer these questions I'm about to give you? There's five of them. I'm not telling you to take 100% responsibility because no one else should take responsibility. I'm not telling you to take 100% responsibility because it's all on you. Actually, I'm not telling you to take 100% responsibility to let anyone off the hook. What I am telling you to take 100% responsibility for in this context is so that you can figure out what you can control, what you can shift, and not blame external circumstances for things that you don't ultimately control. That's what the concept is about. So, from this lens of 100% responsibility to complete an effective retro, and we'll put these questions in the show notes. There are five questions. You're going to ask yourself what went well. You want to start with what went well to get yourself into a more productive mindset. A lot of us like to, we're consultants. We love finding and solving problems. You want to start off with getting your mind into a zone of things. There were things that went well. Let me look at those. Let me set the context here that I do know partially what I'm doing. So don't skip that. I love skipping that. I would never do that if I didn't have to or know that it is the most productive way to do this. I like to just go to the bottom line of what problems can I find so I can go fix them. I will tell you, I have done that. It waters this down. So don't do that. Ask yourself and answer it. What went well? Again, from 100% responsibility. Don't give other people the credit. So you take the credit. What responsibility did you have? What results did you drive? What did you do that created the thing that went well? Those things that went well. Second question, what are the root causes of what went well? What were you thinking at the time? What might have you been thinking about yourself at the time? What might have you been thinking about that potential client at the time? What might have you been thinking about your ability to do the thing that you were doing? What are the root causes of what went well? Again, internally, not externally. Then the third question is what didn't go well? Again, from an objective point of view, you're a human. Lighten it up a little bit. Don't take things so seriously. I have to remind myself of that all the time. I will remind you too. What didn't go well? Just objectively. Objectively, you might have learned that same lesson 59 times. It's not a problem. Just write it down. Then the fourth question is what are the root causes of what didn't go well? Again, internally, not externally. I didn't set expectations. I didn't explain to the consulting buyer what the process would look like. I didn't do X, Y, and Z. I was thinking I'm not good at this. Whatever those root causes are that you believe contributed to the things that didn't go as well as you would have liked them to. Identify those so then you can start addressing the root causes versus trying to fix external things. The fifth and final question, based on what I just learned, what will I adjust or change moving forward, including how I'm thinking, my emotional state, the actions I'm taking, the actions I don't want to take anymore, and really make yourself a holistic plan about how you're going to adjust and refine and clarify and augment the process that you are evaluating. So that is what I have for you today, my friend. I am incredibly passionate about this topic, as you could probably tell, because I know what an impact it makes for your business. And I know how much you probably don't want to do it. And today I want to really implore you to go put this practice into place. Go to the show notes. I'll lay out all of these steps that I gave you today here verbally so you have them. And then go figure out what are the exact triggers you're going to have in your business, time based, skill building related, process related. Map them out and then make them non negotiable. Have yourself an agenda like I just gave you and do these retrospectives because this is what is going to make the investments you're making in your business of your time, even your money, make those count, accelerate your growth, help you create more impact and results that you're wanting to create both for you and for your clients. So that is what I have for you today. Be sure to go subscribe to those emails so that you'll get the topics related to tightening up your operations as we do that this summer and help you to really dial in the business that you're operating. All right. Great to see you. And I will talk with you again next week when I am back from Albuquerque. Talk soon. Bye bye. Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melissalieberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.